What's going on, everybody? You are now tuned in to the Thought of TRANE, and I am Cold Train, fourth quarter train, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Now, as usual, I'm not going to hold y'all for too long. We're just going to chop it up a bit, and then we're going to move in and out as usual, like we always do. Now, we coming up on a beautiful time in hip hop, where the culture and the genre is becoming older in a good sense this time around. We now running up on 20-year, 25-year, 30-year anniversaries of just groundbreaking classic albums. And so as we speak, yesterday, which was September the 24th, 1991, we just celebrated the 30th anniversary of the legendary second album from A Tribe Called Quest, titled The Low End Theory. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be long-winded. I just want to give a brief review and my opinions on this album. So we're going to get right into it. Just the thought process and what came into just starting this album in the first place. So let's go right to that. Now you had 𝒚𝒓𝒚 and Bob Power, two great engineers at the time. They was brought in to help mix and engineer this album. And Q-Tip, he really had a process mapped out in his mind. He was specifically searching for baseline samples, and they probably was primarily jazz samples, but whatever the case may be, he was specifically searching for baseline samples. You know, he wanted everything to be mixed and engineered real bass heavy, bottom heavy. And now if you know what that means, then that means that the title of his album, The Low End Theory, that was purposely titled that way because, you know, the low end is the bass. So now let's speak on Bob Power. Bob Power just mixed the hell out this album. Real super clean mixes. No matter what the sample was, no matter how clean or dirty the sample was, Bob Power just had this crisp, clean sound to it. The drums and the kicks were just popping, just real crisp. And it was like that for a reason, because the way that Bob Power likes to engineer albums, and this is why he was so sought after. See, the way he liked to engineer albums, he liked to take the original sample, whatever he's using, whatever the producer is using, and he know that if that original sample is just looped and used as is, then it's going to be cool, but we still going to hear maybe the muddiness of it. You know, we not going to really hear the instrumentation inside of that sample at its full potential. So what he tries to do, he try to recreate that sound for us to listen to. And so he mixed it to the point where we really getting the feel of that original recording at its pure essence. And that's why, you know, long story short, in layman's terms, that's why it came out sounding so clean. That's why the Low End Theory sounded like that. You got all this hard ass heavy bass, but those drums were just popping out at you up underneath that bass. So that's why it sounded like that. And Bob Power is a legendary engineer for one of those reasons. Now, let's fast forward. After the recording of this album, they wanted to go on a quick tour. They wanted to do a quick little college tour just to generate some buzz for the album. And that's what they did a lot back then. You know, they don't do it so much now, but back then, you know, you record your album and you take it on a college circuit just to generate some buzz, get it popping a little bit. So when they was doing sound checks for the album at these colleges, And 𝒚𝒃 tells a story where in sound check, a whole lot of these colleges they were going to, the sound systems couldn't properly, they wasn't built to deal with all this bass that was running through the system. So they was blowing speakers constantly in sound check before the show even started. So that's how hard hitting this album was, just to give you an idea of the feel that Q-Tip and the Tribe Called Quest was purposely going for this album. Let's get to the vocal side of it. See, the number one thing that pops out at you when you heard this album in totality was Phife. You heard way more Phife, way more than the first album. And there's a reason for that. There's a little story behind that. So we heard Phife on the first album, on a few of the singles, but for the most part, the first album sounded like a solo Q-Tip joint. And that's because Phife wasn't feeling that album. He wasn't feeling the recording process. Whatever it was, if it was just down to the beats, I don't know what it was, but he just wasn't feeling the whole process of making that first album. So he wasn't really there a lot. He wasn't present. So now we get to this album and we hear Phife. Phife is there the whole album. Now the second album, and this is one of the reasons why we really fell in love with this, because even though this is the second one, this is kind of like our first introduction to the true Tribe Called Quest that we fell in love with. Phife is all over this album for two main reasons. The first reason being, on the second album, Jarobi wasn't there. Jarobi wasn't present. So to kind of fill in that void, Phife needed to be there. Q-Tip needed him to be there. Shaheed, they needed Phife to be there just to fill the void of Jarobi. But of course he did way more than just fill a void. The second reason that we hear more Phife is because Phife was being pushed. You know, he was being pushed creatively. There was a lot of MCs coming in and out of these sessions, a lot of freestyle battles going on, a lot of friendly competition, a lot of juices flowing. And in a process and in the course of all that drove Phife to step up his game, step up his pen, to just step up and shine and show everybody what he knew he was all along. You know, a classic MC, not just a sidekick. He wasn't a sidekick by any means, any stretch of the imagination. So let's get to the actual album itself. The first joint, the intro, Excursions. Back in the days when I was a teenager, before I had status and before I had a pager, you could find an abstract listening to hip hop. My pops used to say it reminded him of bebop. Now that right there is one of the best, most recognizable intros ever in hip hop history. And not just that, those opening bars. Those opening bars set the tone for not only what this album was supposed to be, in which, a side note, that's what an intro is supposed to do anyway. See, that's another lost art. People make albums now and they kind of just, they go away from everything they're really supposed to make a album, a true album. You had an intro to set the tone, just to let the listener know what kind of journey he about to go down. It's not just 15 random songs. It's really a well thought out theme to the album. That's the word I'm looking for, a theme. So not only did that opening track, that intro set the tone to the whole album, but it basically set the tone for their whole career. These opening bars in the music alone, the production. This is what we had learned to love from Tribe Called Quest. That opening intro summed up everything. Now, we got the next track, Bugging Out. Let's hit a little quick sample of that.
Microphone check 1, 2, what is this? The 5 for the 7 with the roughneck business. I float like gravity, never had a cavity. Got more rhymes than the one that's got family.
Now, Bugging Out. When I hear that, I automatically think about the video. See, just listening to this album, I'm getting all these instant memories that's coming across my mind. So I remember hearing Bugging Out, and the video actually played at the end of the jazz video. We got the jazz, you know. But this played at the end of that video. And I just remember, you know, they running out real aggressive and crazy looking. Phife came out. He came out rhyming. He had the big bug eyes, the fake eyes, and he just came out rhyming, and just real aggressive and crazy, and just the title of the song, Bugged Out. That's what it was. That's what it looked like. But dope ass song. So, and that's what I remember about that. Strong performance from both MCs, Phife and Q-Tip as usual. Just a lot of strong vocal performances throughout this whole album. Now, we got two songs coming up. You got Butter, and then you got Verses from the Abstract. So these are 2 solo joints back to back on the album. You got Q-Tip. Q-Tip shined over that Heat Wave sample. Well, I can't remember the title of the track, but it's a Q-Tip. He got an opening rhyme on it. Busta Rhymes is in effect. Shaheed is in effect. Phife Diddo is in effect. Check it out and give me my spec. And you know, the rest of that is historic. So now let's move on to Butter. Phife got tired of all the Q-Tip solos, whether it was on the first album or it was on this album. He said, all right, that's enough of your solo shit. I want some shine too. And speaking of shine, that's what he damn sure did on this one. Just the opening bar. 1988 senior year, Garvey High. And if you walk up to any hip hop head and just rap that line, he going to finish it for you. If you walk up to 1 million people, they're going to finish that bar for you, because that's just one of those ones. Everybody want to finish that, because Butter and Q-Tip solo, Verses from the Abstract, I believe those 2 are probably their best 2 solo performances of their career. With Phife, I don't think you're going to find too much argument with that. For Q-Tip, of course, Q-Tip has had whole entire solo albums. But this is probably, to me, this was probably his best moment, is just performing a solo joint, a solo song. Now we rolling up on another single. We got Check the Rhyme. Classic single, classic video. And you automatically remember the video. They walking through the hood, they rhyming on the roof, they going back and forth. You know, we remember all that just like it was yesterday, just like you seen it this morning. You know, unforgettable, you got unforgettable lines from Phife in this song. And see, now we getting to the point in the album where you can really see Phife putting his foot down. He putting his foot down, and he putting his foot in his album. He's establishing the fact, I'm not a sidekick. I'm here. Yeah, I wasn't on the first album, but I'm here now. And y'all not going to play with me, and y'all not going to play with my name. So, you know, right now at this point, I probably would give the best lyrical performance of the album just in its entirety. I'm going to have to give that to Phife right now. Just listening to this album, just going through. Phife is Q-Tip is Q-Tip, and he always want to shine, but to me, Phife is still in the show right now. And I don't think it's too far-fetched for me to say that. I think that's just how I felt when I was listening to this for the first time. And we really starting to hear Phife's identity. You know, he got this flow where it's not nothing too fancy. He stay right on top of the beat. He has a straightforward delivery, but he kills it. He just get in his pocket and he just delivers. You know, it really sounds good over that Q-Tip production. It was just a perfect marriage made in heaven. So when he says, well, here's the funky introduction of how nice I am. Tell your mother, tell your father, send a telegram. That's exactly what this is. This is not just this song, but his performance throughout this whole entire joint. It's a funky introduction of how nice this nigga is. And that's pretty much what it is with that. Let's go up a little bit to jazz. Jazz, we got the jazz. Now, I'm going to just tell you straight off top the way I feel about this song. Every time I hear it, it's just a beautiful ass hip hop song. I mean, you damn near want to shed a tear from the way that Q-Tip constructed this and put it together. It's just one of those ones. It's that sample. It's something about that sample, for one, before they even lay any vocals on it. It kind of take you back and it puts you in one of those type of zones. Now here we come with Phife. Competition, them traffic come sideways. Competition, they must come straight way. Competition, them traffic come sideways. Competition, they must come straight way. Now at this point, Phife just stunned. He just stunting. He just letting y'all know, once again, I'm here to stay. I'm here to stay. For whatever y'all know us for, Tribe Called Quest, I'm a big reason for that. Now, there's one point. There's one point in this song where, and we all know it, there's one point in this song where he caught beef with 𝒉𝒆𝒚. And he had the line, me sweat another, I do my own thing. Strictly hardcore tracks, not a New Jack Swing. So just that bar alone, that was just everybody and their mama just took that for it was a shot at 𝒉𝒆𝒚, because we know 𝒉𝒆𝒚 had the single, huge single, New Jack Swing, which was not only a single, but you know, it was a whole movement in hip hop and in R&B. So yeah, 𝒉𝒆𝒚, and anybody would have listened to it and thought that was a shot at them. So it wasn't really far-fetched to think that. I'm not going to go into the details of the story of it, but yeah, 𝒉𝒆𝒚, one of the members, I forget his name, stepped to Phife, or they saw a tribe at a show, and they had words. They had words like, men, do as usual if you feel disrespected, but at the end of the day, more importantly, they squashed it. They squashed it. It was a misunderstanding, and they just moved on from it. Now, there's another line in this song, and we always quote it. So it's a line in this song where they pause, and then you hear Phife say, oh shit, 𝒚𝒓, he gets props too. So that's really a reason why they say 𝒚𝒄𝒚, he get props too. And it's not just because he worked on this album in a musical way. He actually he added more elements and more components to lending a helping hand in the recording process. Because Phife was a little hard to deal with. You know, so Q-Tip always had his little frustrations with Phife. And Phife was coming with content. Now, like I said, Phife got a straightforward flow, but he also had a straightforward personality. So he was saying a lot of shit. He was saying a lot of shit that Q-Tip trying to curve it and tone it down. So he was like, man, 𝒚, can you work with this dude? I just can't with him right now. He's just frustrating the shit out of me. So 𝒚𝒄𝒚, he kind of worked with Phife on his flow. And when I say work with him on his flow, just kind of like a producer does. This is really a true job of a producer. A producer doesn't let you just come in a booth, say what you want to say in one take and get out of there. There's only a special few who can do that. But in other times, and I know this from a personal standpoint, but other times you might come in that booth and you might say that rhyme 8 times before the producer feel, okay, we got this, we nailed this, we can move on to the next thing. So 𝒚𝒄𝒚 kind of worked with him on that. You know, hey, you know, I like this bar, but can you flow it like this at this certain point of the song? So sort of things like that. And then, like I said, his content. They tried to just dumb down and tone down some of the things that he was saying. So 𝒚𝒄𝒚, he gets props too. And he deserves way more credit than he's already received for making this album. And we got the last song on the album, Scenario. I mean, really, we at a point where what more needs to be said about Scenario? I've already spoken on it myself, and you just can really wrap this up in a nutshell and say there's 2 top posse cuts in hip hop. When we think about the top 2 posse cuts, you're going to have number 1, the Symphony. And number 2 is going to be Scenario, the original Scenario. And that's it. You know, you can argue about that if you want, but I don't think no one really would listen to you. Scenario is number 2. And it just is what it is. Now, for all the legendary moments, the legendary bars, and everything that encompasses Scenario, the one major thing about the whole creation of the song is it launched Busta Rhymes' solo career. It just launched Busta into a whole nother stratosphere. And just being a listener, just being a fan, if you was kind of watching the course of how things was going with leaders of a new school at the time, you could see this coming on the horizon anyway. You can see Busta moving on and transitioning to a solo career, because you wasn't going to be able to contain that talent, that skill set, the personality. You wasn't going to be able to contain that. Now, originally, Charlie Brown, as dope as he was, Charlie Brown was originally meant to be the standout member of the group, but I mean, we know how it played out. So we don't really have to do a deep dive into that. We know what happened. And that's what Scenario was known for. It launched Busta's, that last verse on Scenario just launched him to being what he is now. So just to wrap Scenario up, that was a great close to a perfect album. And it's not really more to be said about that. It was a great close to a perfect album. Now, let's touch on the impact of the low end theory. Now, speaking of a perfect album, the source gave this 5 mics. And I don't think you're going to get one argument on that 5 mic rating. It was a 5 mic album. 5 mic album, and could have been 6, could have been 7. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm just saying that because this album, it wasn't just great within itself. I mean, it changed the sound of a whole genre. After this album, everyone started sampling jazz. And a lot of them did well. Some of it was cheesy, some was subpar, but for the most part, a lot of producers did well with sampling jazz. You know, before we heard a lot of funk stuff. We heard James Brown and a lot of other things. That was primarily what producers were using and sampling at the time, but they was in the forefront of bringing jazz to the culture. And like I said, others used it well, but I think far as who came closest was Primo and Pete Rock. And that's that, you know, DJ Premier and Pete Rock. And then you got the number one guys who helped kind of usher it in, and that was Tribe. And that kind of really started on this album, to me, in my eyes. Now, just, you know, you got more impact from this album. Dr. Dre, as legendary as a producer as he was at the time, when it came to the recording process of just thinking about how he was going to put together the Chronic, this is the album that he went to. This is the album he had started listening to just because of the way that they put this album together. This how just the way that the album sounded. Not necessarily the beat wise, just the way that it was mixed and engineered and produced. That gave Dre a lot of inspiration to start creating the Chronic. So that's big, that's huge. Because I spoke on the Chronic before, and to me, that's my number one album of all time. The best hip hop album of all time. So that's huge. That he drew inspiration from this other groundbreaking album, The Low End Theory. So that, and then like I said, impact. Just think about all the quotable lines that came from this album. So many quotable lines and bars came from this album. It's just really too many to name. And they're still used to this day. They're still sampled to this day. It's just really too many. But out of all the ones that were used, there's one main one. This is the most infamous line that was used from this album and that everybody took with them. Industry rule number 4080, record company people are shady. That's a line that stood the test of time. It opened a lot of eyes. Still to this day. I mean, right now, you have a lot of independent artists, a lot of people making their own lanes, but a lot of these lanes that's open now, they weren't open back then, 30 years ago, when he wrote that line, Q-Tip. And I was just letting people know, like, I'm not just quoting a rule out of a music industry handbook. This shit is happening to me. My record label, which was Jive Records at the time, his record label was screwing him over. And so that when he wrote that line, that was a direct shot at Jive Records. And so people took that. And that was the first line that really made people sit back and say, damn, this business, this industry really is fucked up. And we really need to start rethinking how we read this paperwork and conduct our business going forward. You know, we really need to think about how we construct our contracts. Let's think twice on what we signing off on. So just from that line. Yep. Classic line. So a lot of impactful moments just from this legendary album, The Low End Theory. And in closing, this is one of those joints where if somebody, just any stranger off the street, walks up to you and asks you, why is Tribe Called Quest so loved, cherished, and revered throughout not just the hip hop community, but music period? If anybody asks you that question, they can just come directly to this album, and they'll just begin to see why. Key word, they'll just begin to see why. That Tribe was so loved, cherished, and revered throughout the whole entire industry, not just then, but now. I said I wasn't going to hold you. I just wanted to give my quick review, my thoughts and opinions, and share my love for this album. And as I always say, without no you, there's going to be no me. That's how it is, and that's how it always going to be. And I just want to leave y'all with what I always choose to leave you with. Until next time, be true to self, do yourself, and we out this bitch.